The twilight between sleep and wake. Sleep paralysis happens in the fragile borderland between sleep and wakefulness, where the body still dreams but the mind begins to stir. In this moment, the world feels unreal, like standing between two dimensions that overlap. The sleeper is conscious enough to sense the room, to hear faint sounds, and to feel the weight of their body on the bed. Yet something essential remains locked, as if the body forgot to wake up with the brain. This twilight zone is not a dream, yet it is not full awareness either. Scientists call it a boundary phenomenon of REM sleep, when vivid dreaming continues even though consciousness returns. The body is still under the influence of muscle atonia, the natural paralysis that prevents people from acting out their dreams. What makes this moment so strange is that awareness returns before the body does, creating a mismatch between intention and motion. For many, it lasts only a few seconds. For others, it stretches endlessly, each second feeling like a lifetime of helpless stillness. It is the exact moment where imagination and reality blur together, producing one of the most surreal human experiences possible. The body that refuses to move. When sleep paralysis begins, the mind feels awake but the body remains completely still, as though turned to stone. The sleeper may try to move a hand or whisper a word, but every command vanishes before reaching the muscles. This occurs because the body's protective system is still active. During rapid eye movement sleep, the brain sends signals to paralyze most muscles to prevent physical movement while dreaming. Normally, this paralysis fades before consciousness returns. But sometimes the timing fails, and the mind wakes first. The person becomes a trapped observer within their own body, aware of the paralysis yet powerless to break it. Breathing remains shallow, eyes can open slightly, but limbs refuse to obey. It is a safety feature that feels like a prison. This temporary paralysis can trigger deep panic, even though it is harmless. The struggle between a conscious mind and a sleeping body creates a haunting sensation of being locked inside oneself, an eerie contradiction of awareness without control. Eventually, the balance resets, and motion returns like a tide coming back to shore. Ancient shadows and modern science. Long before neuroscience, people searched for meaning in the dark stillness of sleep paralysis. Ancient societies described it as a spirit, a demon, or a ghost pressing down on the sleeper's chest. In Japan, it was called kanashibari, in Newfoundland, the old hag, and in parts of Africa, a witch riding through the night. Every culture gave the same terror a name, shaped by its beliefs. Today, scientists map those myths to the natural biology of REM sleep. The paralysis, the vivid visions, and the suffocating pressure all come from mismatched signals in the sleeping brain. Yet even knowing this, the fear feels ancient. It echoes the stories told around firelight, when shadows were alive and dreams were gates to other worlds. Sleep paralysis remains a rare place where folklore and science meet, each offering an explanation that feels true in its own way. It reminds us that even with modern knowledge, the oldest fears still live quietly within the human mind, waiting for night to fall and the boundary between real and unreal to blur again. Eyes wide, mind awake. One of the strangest aspects of sleep paralysis is the ability to see without moving. The eyes can open, revealing the room exactly as it is, yet everything feels charged with an otherworldly tension. The ceiling might shimmer, shadows may seem to move, and sounds appear amplified or distorted. The person knows they are in their own bed, but the sense of presence is overwhelming, as if someone else stands nearby. This happens because the visual and auditory centers of the brain remain partially in dream mode. Real sensory input mixes with imagined images, creating a surreal hybrid of reality and dream. Some people even report seeing themselves from above, a temporary out-of-body illusion caused by sensory confusion. The brain tries to make sense of incomplete data, and the result feels vividly real. This is why sleep paralysis experiences often blend familiar details with dreamlike impossibilities. The world becomes both safe and haunted, ordinary and terrifying, under the flickering light of half-wakefulness. The weight on the chest. The sensation of a heavy presence pressing down on the chest is one of the most common, and frightening features of sleep paralysis. People often describe it as an invisible weight, a crushing force, or a creature sitting upon them. In reality, this feeling is the result of shallow breathing during REM sleep. When the body is paralyzed, the muscles that control deep breaths are temporarily limited, leaving only the diaphragm to move. This creates the perception of pressure or suffocation. The brain, half dreaming, interprets this physical sensation as an external threat. In the past, it became the image of a demon or ghost pressing down on the sleeper's body. The fear feeds the experience, tightening the chest even more, forming a feedback loop of panic and breathlessness. Understanding that this sensation is natural can ease the fear, but in the moment, it feels utterly real. The mind transforms ordinary physiology into a haunting illusion, turning breath into terror, and stillness into the weight of unseen company. Hallucinations that feel too real. During sleep paralysis, the mind remains half-dreaming, which opens the door to vivid hallucinations. These are not random flashes of imagination but complete sensory experiences. People see shadowy figures, hear whispers, or feel a hand touch their skin. Some sense a presence standing near the bed, silent and watching. These visions arise because the dreaming brain continues to generate images and sensations while the conscious mind awakens. The boundary between imagination and perception dissolves. The visual cortex lights up, the auditory centers hum, and fear fills in the blanks. What makes these hallucinations so convincing is that they use the same neural pathways as real perception. The mind believes what it sees, even when reason insists it cannot be true. For centuries, these visions inspired myths of ghosts and alien visitors, yet they are simply the brain's natural theater of confusion. The hallucinations end as suddenly as they begin, fading with the return of full wakefulness, leaving behind only wonder, dread, and the strange memory of seeing what was never there. Why fear comes first. Fear is the first emotion to arrive in sleep paralysis. Before thought, before movement, before reason, the body trembles with primal terror. The amygdala, the brain's ancient alarm system, remains active during this transition. It detects the paralysis, interprets it as danger, and floods the body with adrenaline. The heart races, but the body cannot move to escape. This creates a sense of absolute helplessness, one of the strongest triggers of panic. The brain, desperate to explain the fear, invents shapes and sounds to justify it. The imagined intruder, the dark figure, the pressure on the chest, all become stories the mind tells to match the emotion. In truth, the fear itself came first. It is the raw biological echo of survival instinct misfiring in a harmless state. Understanding this order helps explain why sleep paralysis feels so terrifying. The body reacts as if hunted, while the rational mind is still waking, trapped inside an ancient reflex that mistakes safety for threat. When it runs in the family, sleep paralysis can be a shared family experience, passed silently through generations. Studies suggest that genetics influence how the brain transitions between REM sleep and wakefulness. People whose parents or siblings experience sleep paralysis are more likely to encounter it themselves. This connection may be linked to inherited traits affecting sleep patterns, circadian rhythm, or neurotransmitter sensitivity. Families sometimes discover this pattern only after comparing stories. The shared details, paralysis, pressure, presence, become strangely familiar. In older traditions, families interpreted it as a haunting that followed bloodlines. Science now frames it as a physiological tendency, not a curse. Still, the emotional echo remains powerful. Knowing that one's parents once faced the same frozen terror can feel eerie yet comforting. It turns a lonely event into something shared, a quiet thread running through dreams across time. Sleep paralysis becomes less of a personal nightmare and more of a strange family inheritance, carried not in folklore but in the deep rhythms of the human brain. Stress, sleep deprivation, and triggers. Sleep paralysis does not strike at random. It often appears when the body is exhausted, stressed, or deprived of rest. Irregular sleep schedules, late nights, or frequent awakenings can confuse the brain's timing between REM sleep and wakefulness. When the transition happens too suddenly, paralysis lingers. Stress magnifies this risk by flooding the body with hormones that disrupt sleep architecture. Anxiety, depression, and certain medications can make episodes more likely. Even sleeping on one's back may contribute, as it affects breathing patterns. Each person's triggers differ, yet they follow the same principle: imbalance. The mind and body must synchronize perfectly for sleep to feel seamless. When that harmony breaks, strange things emerge in the dark. Recognizing triggers can help prevent future episodes. Rest, regularity, and calmness are the best defenses. Sleep paralysis may be frightening, but it is also a message from the body, whispering that rest has become fragmented, and the borders between dream and waking need repair. Lucid nightmares and half-dreams. Some people experience sleep paralysis as a lucid dream gone wrong. They realize they are dreaming, but awareness arrives too early, before control returns. This creates a paradox of consciousness. The dreamer knows what is happening yet cannot change it. The dream continues around them, blending with the real room, turning familiar surroundings into eerie distortions. Walls breathe, figures hover, voices murmur. The person understands it is a dream, but the emotional brain refuses to believe it. Fear turns lucid clarity into nightmare. However, for experienced lucid dreamers, this state can sometimes be redirected. By staying calm and focusing on breathing, they can shift back into the dream world or wake completely. This delicate balance between control and surrender defines the border of awareness. It is both terrifying and fascinating, a reminder that consciousness is not a switch but a sliding scale. In sleep paralysis, that scale becomes visible, and the dreamer briefly glimpses the machinery of their own mind at work. The science of REM atonia. At the heart of sleep paralysis lies a natural process called REM atonia, the quiet paralysis that keeps the body safe while dreaming. During the rapid eye movement phase, the brain shuts down most muscle activity, allowing vivid dreams to unfold without physical reaction. This mechanism ensures that people do not act out their dreams, but sometimes the timing misfires. The sleeper's mind wakes up while the muscles are still silenced. The conscious brain begins to observe, but the body remains deeply still. Scientists trace this to signals from the brainstem, where inhibitory neurotransmitters such as glycine and GABA block motor neurons. Normally, this fades before awareness returns, but when it lingers, it produces the eerie state of sleep paralysis. Knowing this transforms the experience from mystery into marvel. The paralysis is not an attack or punishment, but the body's own protective design running slightly out of sync. In essence, sleep paralysis is not a flaw, but the visible seam between dreaming safety and waking awareness, a rare glimpse of the hidden coordination that keeps humans alive each night. The brain's timing glitch. Sleep paralysis is a timing error, a brief misalignment between body and mind. Normally, sleep follows a cycle that shifts smoothly through stages, from light slumber to deep rest, and finally to rapid eye movement sleep. In REM, the mind dreams while the body lies still. Waking usually reverses this sequence, bringing muscle control back before consciousness returns. But when the brain wakes too quickly, it interrupts the order. Awareness flickers on while paralysis still holds the body. The brain, confused, registers the stillness as danger, triggering fear. This simple glitch explains nearly every feature of the phenomenon. What feels supernatural is often biological rhythm out of tune. The mismatch lasts only moments, but during it, the mind becomes aware of its own limitations. It watches the body refuse to respond, and that awareness magnifies the helplessness. This timing flaw shows how delicate the balance of consciousness truly is, resting on milliseconds of coordination that usually remain invisible until something goes wrong. Night visitors and cultural stories. Across centuries and continents, sleep paralysis has been explained through stories of night visitors. In medieval Europe, it was the incubus or succubus, dark beings said to sit upon the chest and steal breath. In Scandinavia, it became the mare, a spirit who pressed down on sleepers. In Southeast Asia, the experience was described as a ghost or ancestor entering the body. These legends emerged because the sensations are universal. The paralysis, the pressure, and the unseen presence all fit perfectly into the language of myth. Before science, storytelling was the only map for fear. Even now, cultural context shapes how people interpret episodes. Someone raised with folklore of demons may see a creature, while others raised with alien abduction tales might imagine a visitor from the stars. Sleep paralysis acts as a mirror, reflecting whatever cultural fears lie closest to the surface. The same biological event can become myth, mystery, or medical phenomenon depending on the story told around it. The sense of presence. One of the most mysterious sensations during sleep paralysis is the feeling that someone else is in the room. The air seems heavier, the silence thicker, as if another consciousness stands nearby. This presence feels intelligent, focused, and often menacing. Neurologically, this sensation arises when the brain misinterprets signals from its own body. With movement frozen, the brain still expects sensory feedback, but receives none. It fills in the absence by projecting awareness outward, creating an imagined presence that feels separate from the self. This is similar to what happens in certain neurological conditions where people feel followed by their own shadow. During paralysis, this self-generated other becomes the ultimate intruder. The brain, trying to make sense of fear and immobility, invents a watcher. This is why so many describe the experience as haunted. The haunting is real, but the ghost is internal, a mirror made of fear and biology. How the mind builds monsters. During sleep paralysis, imagination works like a sculptor shaping fear into form. The mind, desperate to explain what is happening, creates images from fragments of memory and expectation. A shadow becomes a figure, a creak becomes a whisper, and a faint light becomes glowing eyes. This process is called pareidolia, the brain's tendency to find meaning in chaos. Normally it helps people recognize faces quickly, but under fear, it becomes a factory for monsters. The visual cortex amplifies darkness into detail, guided by the emotional brain's panic. These hallucinations can be terrifyingly convincing, but they reveal more about human psychology than the supernatural. The mind is a storyteller that cannot stand uncertainty. When it meets fear and stillness, it builds something to fear. Understanding this helps explain why different people see different entities. The monsters are custom-made illusions, designed by each person's deepest memories, beliefs, and anxieties. When the room feels alive. People often describe the environment during sleep paralysis as strangely alive. The walls seem to hum, the air vibrates, and the silence feels charged with invisible motion. This occurs because the brain is halfway between dream and wake. In that state, sensory information becomes distorted. The auditory system may pick up internal body sounds, like blood flow or heartbeat, and misinterpret them as external noises. Light sources flicker oddly because the eyes are open but unfocused. Shadows move as perception shifts between real and imagined. The brain tries to stabilize the scene, but without full control, it adds dreamlike qualities. The familiar becomes uncanny. Even the bed or pillow might feel as though it is pulsing or sinking. It is a moment when reality ripples, not because the world changes, but because consciousness cannot decide what to believe. In that confusion, the ordinary bedroom transforms into a breathing, living landscape of fear. The invisible hands of the dream. Many people report the sensation of being touched, grabbed, or pulled during sleep paralysis. Sometimes it feels like fingers brushing skin, other times a firm hold pressing them down. These sensations are tactile hallucinations, created by the sensory cortex still active, in dream mode. Without real movement, the brain continues to simulate touch as if responding to dream imagery. The result is a ghostly physical sensation without a source. Because fear heightens sensitivity, these touches feel painfully real. The body, paralyzed yet alert, interprets every imagined contact as intrusion. In some cases, the feeling even mimics gravity shifting or being dragged off the bed. This is the brain's way of translating dream movement into physical awareness. What feels like an external attack is really internal data without proper grounding. The dream world leaves its fingerprints on the waking body, proof that the border between them is far thinner than most people ever realize. Breath, panic, and control. Breathing becomes a central struggle in sleep paralysis. The body still controls respiration automatically, but awareness makes every shallow breath feel wrong. Because the chest muscles are partially immobilized, inhaling feels weak and restricted. The brain interprets this as suffocation, igniting panic. The fear then tightens the chest even more, forming a cycle of anxiety that feeds itself. However, despite the feeling, oxygen levels remain safe. It only feels like drowning because the body's signals are mismatched with perception. Those who learn to focus on slow breathing during an episode often find relief faster. Redirecting attention from fear to rhythm helps the body and mind resynchronize. Breath becomes a bridge, guiding consciousness back toward calm. Understanding this is empowering. It turns what once felt like helplessness into a skill, a quiet act of control in the middle of paralysis. Breathing, the most basic rhythm of life, becomes the key to breaking free. The illusion of sound. Sleep paralysis often brings eerie sounds that seem to echo inside the room or the mind. Some hear footsteps, whispers, mechanical hums, or the rush of wind. These are auditory hallucinations, produced by the same dreaming brain that creates visual ones. When the brain is trapped between REM and waking, the auditory system misfires, blending dream noise with real environmental sounds. Even the quiet hum of an air conditioner can morph into voices. Because fear amplifies perception, the brain searches for meaning in random noise, transforming it into threats. The sound may feel directional, moving closer or circling the bed, a trick caused by the brain's attempt to locate a non-existent source. Understanding that these sounds are self-generated can help lessen their power. They are echoes of a dreaming mind still speaking its own language, a final whisper before the boundaries of consciousness return to normal. The moment of release. Every episode of sleep paralysis ends the same way, with a sudden return of movement that feels like breaking through a wall. Some people start with a finger twitch or a slow breath that deepens into full motion. Others wake with a jerk, heart pounding, body drenched in adrenaline. The release is a flood of energy, relief mixed with disbelief. The brain and body finally reconnect, synchronizing their rhythms once more. The experience may last seconds or minutes, but the return feels dramatic, as though escaping an invisible trap. In that first free breath, the room becomes ordinary again, the shadows harmless, the silence familiar. The terror fades, replaced by exhaustion and wonder. The person lies still, catching their breath, unsure what was real. It is a small resurrection of consciousness, proof that even the deepest paralysis cannot hold forever. The mind always finds its way back to motion and light. Why it happens more during stress. Sleep paralysis appears more frequently during stressful periods because stress disturbs the balance of the body's natural sleep rhythm. When the mind carries anxiety into the night, it prevents full relaxation. Stress hormones such as cortisol remain elevated, interfering with deep rest and delaying the proper sequence of REM sleep. As a result, the brain wakes too early or too abruptly, leaving muscle paralysis intact. The exhausted body cannot synchronize its phases, so consciousness emerges in fragments. During emotional stress, the mind is also more alert to threat, primed to interpret strange sensations as danger. This amplifies the panic and hallucinations that often follow. People under pressure, working late, or facing emotional turmoil are far more likely to experience episodes. The brain's fragile boundary between dreaming and waking becomes thin and unstable. Understanding this link helps turn fear into self-awareness. Calming the day calms the night, and balance in waking life often restores peace to the fragile mechanics of sleep. Why it feels supernatural. Sleep paralysis feels supernatural because it combines consciousness with dream imagery, creating an experience that violates ordinary logic. A person lies awake yet cannot move, sees figures that seem real, and feels sensations that have no source. The mind, searching for explanation, turns to familiar stories, spirits, demons, visitors. Every culture fills the unknown with meaning. The mix of awareness, fear, and vivid hallucination is powerful enough to convince anyone. What truly makes it feel otherworldly is the seamlessness. The hallucinations are not vague dreams but perfect overlays on reality, using real sensory input as a canvas. The mind believes what it perceives, and when the impossible appears in one's own room, disbelief collapses. Even knowing the science does not always remove the awe. The experience touches something primal, a reminder that the brain can create entire worlds while the body lies motionless, proving that imagination and reality are not always separate realms. Sleep positions that matter. Body posture plays a surprising role in sleep paralysis. Research shows that people who sleep on their backs experience it more often. In this position, gravity presses the chest downward, slightly restricting airflow. The body senses this pressure and interprets it as danger when half awake, reinforcing the illusion of a presence or weight on the chest. Sleeping on the side or stomach reduces these sensations, making episodes less likely. However, position alone cannot prevent them entirely, since timing and brain chemistry are the deeper causes. For those who experience frequent episodes, experimenting with posture can still bring relief. Some even train themselves to shift positions instinctively once they begin waking. The way a person rests can influence how their body transitions between dreaming and wakefulness. Something as simple as turning the body slightly can soften the boundaries of sleep and keep the night free from frozen awakenings. Recurring episodes and sleep cycles. For some, sleep paralysis returns night after night, often during the same hours. This repetition ties closely to REM cycles, which repeat every 90 minutes. The final cycles before morning contain the longest dreams, making them the most vulnerable moments for paralysis. When a person wakes repeatedly during these phases, the brain's transitions become confused. Fatigue from previous episodes can further disturb patterns, creating a loop of anxiety and sleeplessness. Fear of experiencing it again can ironically make it more likely, since worry disrupts rest. The cycle becomes self-sustaining until the person restores consistent sleep habits. Regular schedules, gradual wake times, and sufficient rest can break the loop. Sleep paralysis may seem random, but it follows the rhythm of the night like clockwork. The key to escaping repetition lies in understanding the pattern, resetting it one quiet, rested night at a time. When the mind becomes the audience. During sleep paralysis, the mind watches itself think. It becomes both the actor and the observer, trapped in an internal theater. Thoughts echo without control, looping like fragments of dream dialogue. The person may feel detached from their body, hovering slightly above it, seeing themselves from a distance. This out-of-body sensation stems from disrupted communication between sensory and spatial processing regions in the brain. The sense of, I am here, and my body is there, becomes disconnected. Instead of being within the body, consciousness floats freely, confused about where it resides. Though disorienting, this reveals the fluid nature of self-awareness. The human mind is not fixed inside the body but constructed from continuous sensory signals. When those signals falter, identity feels suspended. In sleep paralysis, the brain briefly exposes how fragile and flexible the sense of self truly is. Children and early experiences. Sleep paralysis can begin as early as childhood, often mistaken for nightmares. A child may wake, unable to call for help, terrified by the feeling of being watched. Parents might dismiss it as imagination, but for the child, the fear feels absolute. Early episodes often occur during growth spurts or periods of disrupted sleep. The developing brain experiments with REM transitions and sometimes misfires. Because children's imaginations are vivid, the hallucinations appear even stronger. Monsters from bedtime stories blend with real sensory confusion, making the experience unforgettable. Some children outgrow it as their sleep cycles stabilize, while others carry the tendency into adulthood. Recognizing the signs early can help families respond with comfort instead of disbelief. Teaching calm breathing, gentle reassurance, and steady sleep routines can transform what feels like haunting into a simple misfire of biology. Understanding turns fear into knowledge, even for the smallest dreamers. The role of culture and belief. Culture deeply shapes how people interpret sleep paralysis. In places where spiritual explanations dominate, the experience is framed as an attack or visitation. In secular societies, it becomes a neurological glitch. Yet the feelings are identical across the world. Studies show that people who believe in supernatural causes experience stronger fear and more vivid hallucinations. Belief influences perception, coloring every detail. A person expecting demons will see them, while another expecting a dream will simply wait it out. The mind fills the unknown with its chosen symbols. This makes culture a powerful filter between sensation and meaning. The science remains the same, but interpretation changes the emotional weight. Understanding these cultural lenses allows compassion for those who see it differently. Whether one believes in spirits or synapses, the experience carries the same human core, the struggle between awareness and the immovable body in the deep quiet of night. Dream fragments that bleed through. Sometimes, sleep paralysis carries leftover fragments from dreams. Images, voices, or scenes drift into the waking world, half-finished and fading. These fragments linger because REM activity remains partially active. The dreaming brain has not yet shut down, so bits of narrative leak into reality. The person may see dream characters standing near the bed or hear conversations continuing in the air. It is as if two worlds overlap for a few seconds before separating again. This phenomenon reveals how fragile the barrier between dreaming and waking truly is. Most nights, the transition is seamless, but in paralysis, the gate opens both ways. Dream and reality coexist, blending textures, colors, and sounds. It feels uncanny, but it also provides a rare glimpse into how dreams end, slowly dissolving into waking light, like mist retreating before sunrise. How light and darkness affect it. Environmental light can influence sleep paralysis experiences. Episodes often occur in dimly lit rooms, where shadows take on strange shapes. The visual system, searching for clarity, fills the darkness with imagined detail. A curtain becomes a figure, a chair becomes a silhouette. Even faint light can fuel hallucination. Conversely, sleeping with gentle light or dawn simulation lamps may reduce occurrences by altering REM patterns and easing awakenings. Total darkness, while natural, allows sensory deprivation that enhances confusion when consciousness returns too early. The mix of light and shadow becomes a canvas for the dreaming brain's projections. Understanding this relationship turns environment into ally. Adjusting light, temperature, and noise can subtly reprogram the sleep cycle, keeping the border between dream and wake less turbulent, and the night a little kinder. The science of the startle. When paralysis ends, the body often jerks violently, as if breaking free from invisible ropes. This reaction is the startle reflex, the nervous system's way of reasserting control. Adrenaline surges through the muscles, snapping them awake. It feels involuntary because the brain regains movement all at once, not gradually. The relief is mixed with confusion, leaving the heart racing. This reflex mirrors the hypnic jerk that sometimes occurs when falling asleep, except reversed. Both involve sudden neurofiring during transitions between states. In that instant, consciousness and muscle activity reunite, producing an explosive release. Though startling, it is harmless. The body resets itself, confirming that the paralysis was temporary. What feels like escape is actually synchronization restored, the nervous system returning to perfect alignment. It is the body's quiet reassurance that, no matter how strange the journey, wakefulness always wins in the end. Memory of the unmoving night. After an episode of sleep paralysis, memory often feels fragmented. People recall the stillness vividly but struggle to tell whether they were dreaming or awake. The mind records the event like a dream but tags it with the clarity of reality. This hybrid memory makes it feel unforgettable. Scientists believe this blending occurs because the hippocampus, which processes memory, activates during the transition between REM and wake. It captures dream content and sensory detail simultaneously. The emotional intensity also imprints strongly, as fear strengthens memory formation. This is why even one episode can stay clear for years. Some describe it as a frozen snapshot in their life, replaying again and again. Over time, these memories may lose their terror but retain their surreal beauty, a reminder that the border between sleep and consciousness is fragile and fascinating. Sleep paralysis, in memory, becomes less nightmare and more mystery, an echo of a night when time seemed to stop. The quiet between worlds. There is a stillness in sleep paralysis unlike any other. The air feels suspended, every sound distant, every breath deliberate. It is as though the world holds its breath, waiting. This silence is not only external but internal. The chatter of thought quiets as the mind becomes hyper-aware of its own stillness. The nervous system slows, muscles rest, and only consciousness remains awake, floating in darkness. For some, this stillness becomes peaceful once fear subsides. It feels meditative, like drifting weightlessly in space. The lack of motion heightens awareness of being alive. Though most people focus on terror, a few describe profound calm, sensing the moment as a gateway between sleep and awakening. It is the purest pause a human can experience, the universe reduced to breath, heartbeat, and awareness suspended in quiet light. In that space, the body sleeps while the soul listens. The illusion of floating. Many people report floating above their beds or rising toward the ceiling during sleep paralysis. This sensation, often mistaken for an out-of-body experience, is a byproduct of disrupted sensory input. When the brain loses physical feedback from muscles but remains partially conscious, it creates an internal model of body position. That model can drift. The vestibular system, which controls balance and orientation, continues to send signals from dream motion, making the person feel weightless. Because the brain cannot distinguish internal from external movement in that state, it feels like true levitation. These floating sensations inspired centuries of spiritual interpretation, astral travel, soul flight, or spirit separation. Modern science recognizes it as a remarkable perceptual glitch. The floating body is the mind's best guess about itself when deprived of grounding. It shows that self-perception is not fixed but fluid, shaped by signals that sometimes forget which world they belong to. When fear turns into curiosity. For some people, repeated sleep paralysis transforms from a source of dread into an object of fascination. The more they learn about its mechanisms, the less frightening it becomes. Understanding replaces panic with observation. They begin to notice details, the texture of air, the slow return of movement, the way hallucinations shift with emotion. Some even use the state as a bridge into lucid dreaming, choosing to explore rather than escape. This shift happens when knowledge disarms fear. The same biology that once inspired terror becomes a subject of wonder. Sleep paralysis reveals consciousness in motion, showing the fragile gears of sleep. Those who face it often emerge with deeper respect for their own minds. Fear may begin the journey, but curiosity often ends it, transforming paralysis into an invitation to understand the quiet mysteries of human awareness. The role of the circadian clock. Sleep paralysis is closely tied to the body's circadian rhythm, the internal clock that governs sleep timing. When this clock falls out of sync, the brain struggles to coordinate REM cycles properly. Shift workers, travelers crossing time zones, and night owls are more vulnerable. The body expects darkness and rest, but the schedule says otherwise. This mismatch creates unstable transitions between sleep stages, increasing the chance of partial awakenings. The circadian rhythm relies on light cues, consistent meals, and temperature changes to stay balanced. Disrupting these signals confuses the brain's sense of time. Maintaining regular patterns helps reduce episodes. It reminds the body when to dream and when to wake. The circadian clock, though invisible, acts as the conductor of the sleep orchestra. When it falters, the music stumbles, and for a few strange moments, the mind wakes before the melody ends. Why it happens during naps. Sleep paralysis can strike not only at night but also during daytime naps. Short sleeps often plunge directly into REM, especially when a person is already tired. The brain, eager for dream rest, skips lighter stages. This makes it easier for consciousness to reappear mid-dream. Because naps occur in brighter settings, the mixture of light, sound, and dream imagery becomes even more confusing. People wake half-aware, surrounded by real-world cues blended with hallucinations. The suddenness of naps, without full relaxation, increases the risk of incomplete transitions. Students, shift workers, and those who nap irregularly often encounter this version. While brief, nap paralysis feels equally intense. The daylight adds strangeness, dream figures appearing in sunlit rooms, whispers echoing at noon. It reminds us that sleep paralysis is not tied to darkness but to timing, a quirk of the body's rhythm rather than the hour of night. Why it happens more in certain people. Some individuals experience sleep paralysis repeatedly while others never encounter it. Scientists link this difference to several traits. People with irregular sleep schedules, vivid dream recall, or strong imaginative tendencies are more prone to it. Anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress also increase susceptibility, likely because these conditions heighten emotional arousal during sleep. Even personality factors play a role. Creative minds often experience stronger imagery and transitions between conscious states. It is not a sign of weakness but sensitivity, a mind finely tuned to its own rhythms. Genetics may also influence how neurotransmitters regulate REM activity. Together, these factors create a perfect storm for temporary paralysis. Understanding predisposition helps remove stigma. The experience is not strange or cursed, merely one expression of how diverse human sleep truly is. The same mind that dreams vividly may also awaken vividly, caught between two worlds for a brief, breathtaking pause. The science of sleep paralysis frequency. Sleep paralysis affects about 8% of people worldwide, though the number rises among students, night workers, and those with disrupted sleep. Episodes vary in frequency, from once in a lifetime to several times per week. Surveys show that most people experience it during major life changes, when routines or emotional states shift dramatically. The brain seems sensitive to instability. When schedules, diet, or mental load change, REM control weakens. The exact frequency also depends on genetics and environment. Some individuals may go years without another episode, while others enter repeating cycles. The variability reflects how unique each brain's sleep architecture is. Though it can feel deeply personal, sleep paralysis is a global experience shared across ages and cultures. The numbers prove what myths once hinted. Nearly everyone, at some point, meets the frozen border between dreaming and wakefulness. The medical side of the night. Doctors classify sleep paralysis as a parasomnia, a group of unusual sleep behaviors that includes sleepwalking and night terrors. Unlike those, sleep paralysis involves full awareness. It is not considered dangerous, but frequent episodes may indicate disrupted sleep architecture or other conditions such as narcolepsy. Physicians evaluate it by studying sleep patterns, oxygen levels, and brain waves. In rare cases, medications that regulate REM sleep can help. However, the most effective treatment remains lifestyle adjustment, consistent sleep, reduced stress, and avoidance of stimulants near bedtime. Medical understanding transforms the event from horror to physiology. It reminds patients that what feels like supernatural paralysis is, in truth, a predictable and measurable phenomenon of the sleeping brain. Knowing this turns the mysterious into the manageable, and the night's terror into something the daylight can calmly explain. Narcolepsy and its connection. Sleep paralysis frequently appears alongside narcolepsy, a condition where the brain's control over sleep and wakefulness becomes unstable. People with narcolepsy often enter REM sleep directly, even while talking or eating, and may wake abruptly from it. Because their REM boundaries are thin, paralysis occurs more often. It can also combine with vivid hallucinations known as hypnagogic or hypnopompic imagery. In narcolepsy, these episodes are not just isolated mistakes but part of a larger rhythm disorder. Understanding this connection helps differentiate ordinary sleep paralysis from medical conditions that require attention. Treatment focuses on stabilizing sleep cycles through medication and routine. The relationship between the two shows how delicate REM regulation truly is. When that system loosens, consciousness slips easily between worlds, creating experiences both fascinating and frightening. Narcolepsy magnifies what ordinary sleepers glimpse only occasionally, the astonishing instability hidden inside the nightly dream machinery. Dreams that refuse to end. Sometimes, during sleep paralysis, a dream continues even after the mind begins to awaken. It is as if the story refuses to stop, clinging to consciousness. The sleeper feels caught inside two realities, aware of the real room but still trapped in the dream's logic. Scientists call this REM intrusion, where dream imagery overlaps with waking perception. The result is surreal, like watching hallucinations projected on real walls. Figures walk across ceilings, voices whisper from shadows, and the body remains frozen in both fear and fascination. These extended dreams show how deeply the brain protects its narratives. Even when consciousness rises, the dream resists dismissal. For some, it feels cinematic, for others, nightmarish. Yet both reactions reveal the same truth: the dreaming brain does not surrender easily. It tries to finish its sentence, even as daylight begins to speak. When reality blends with dream logic, sleep paralysis bends the boundaries of what feels real. The walls of the bedroom may appear to melt, furniture shifts shape, and sound arrives distorted. The brain interprets ordinary surroundings through the lens of REM activity, blending memory, imagination, and perception. It becomes a waking dream layered over reality. This state explains why so many people believe they have seen ghosts, aliens, or dark presences. The sensory data is real, but the interpretation belongs to the dream world. The combination produces an uncanny sense of truth, as if the supernatural moment genuinely happened. In fact, it is the mind's perfect illusion, a masterpiece of confusion. Sleep paralysis shows that consciousness is not a switch but a spectrum. When it slides halfway open, both worlds leak through, creating visions that feel truer than waking life itself. Sleep paralysis across cultures. Every culture has its own name for the frozen night. In Japan, it is called kanashibari, meaning bound in metal. In Newfoundland, it is the old hag sitting on the chest. In parts of Nigeria, it is a witch riding through the dark. Despite their differences, these stories share the same physical experience: immobility, pressure, and unseen presence. Before neuroscience explained rematonia, people sought meaning through myth. Each society shaped the terror into its own reflection of fear, spirits, demons, or divine warnings. Yet, across continents, the symptoms remain nearly identical. This shared phenomenon reminds us that sleep paralysis belongs not to one culture but to humanity itself. Ancient names gave it power, modern understanding gives it clarity. The night visitor, whether ghost or brain glitch, has always been part of our collective dream. The witch on the chest. For centuries, the image of a witch pressing on a sleeper's chest appeared in art and folklore. Paintings from the Renaissance show shadowy figures crouched over motionless dreamers, eyes wide in terror. This archetype came directly from sleep paralysis reports. The sensation of pressure, the inability to move, and the looming presence naturally became personified as something sitting atop the chest. The interpretation was both frightening and symbolic, an expression of repressed fear, guilt, or the weight of sin. Today, we understand that the chest pressure results from shallow REM breathing and tense muscles, not dark magic. Still, the old imagery remains hauntingly beautiful. The witch, the shadow, the visitor, each was humanity's poetic attempt to explain a real biological mystery. It shows how art often blooms from fear, and how nightmares sometimes give birth to paintings that outlive the terror itself. Sleep paralysis in literature and art. Writers and artists have long captured the strange stillness of paralysis. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Edgar Allan Poe's Tales, and Henry Fuseli's painting The Nightmare all reflected. The frozen dreamer, eyes open yet helpless, became a metaphor for suppressed emotion and human vulnerability. Sleep paralysis symbolizes the mind's imprisonment within its own creation, the tension between control and surrender. In modern media, films and novels use it to evoke dread, because it feels real. The audience recognizes that particular helplessness, the silent scream that never escapes. Art gives form to the invisible, turning private terror into shared experience. Through these works, sleep paralysis escapes the bedroom and enters history as both science and story. The horror it brings at night transforms, by daylight, into inspiration, proof that even fear can be sculpted into beauty. When sleep paralysis inspires creativity. Some people channel their experiences into art, writing, or music. The vivid hallucinations, the sense of suspension, and the eerie calm become sources of imagination. The boundary between dream and reality offers fertile ground for creativity. Artists who once feared the paralysis begin to treat it as a muse. They draw the shapes they saw, write about the whispering figures, compose music that captures the tension between stillness and movement. This transformation from terror to expression mirrors how the brain reframes memory. Fear, once understood, becomes fascination. The same imagery that haunted them at night later fuels innovation by day. Sleep paralysis, then, becomes not just a quirk of sleep but a wellspring of creativity, a reminder that the mind's strangest moments often hold the seeds of inspiration. Children and the frozen moment. Though less common, sleep paralysis can appear in childhood. For a young mind, the experience feels especially confusing. They may describe monsters sitting on them, whispering voices, or the inability to call for help. Parents sometimes mistake it for nightmares or night terrors, but the awareness differentiates it. Children remember every detail. Their developing brains, rich with imagination and unstable sleep cycles, occasionally create these mixed states. Fortunately, episodes in youth are often brief and fade with age as sleep stabilizes. Reassurance and explanation help immensely. When children learn that it is only their brain protecting them from acting out dreams, fear dissolves. Childhood paralysis reminds us how powerful imagination is, and how understanding can transform even the scariest night into a story of resilience and growth. Adolescence and the overworked brain. Teenagers experience sleep paralysis more frequently due to irregular schedules, emotional stress, and changing circadian rhythms. Late-night study sessions, caffeine, and phone screens push sleep into chaos. The adolescent brain, still maturing, easily slips into incomplete transitions between REM and waking. When consciousness returns too early, paralysis follows. Because teens are also prone to anxiety, fear intensifies the experience. They may interpret it as supernatural or medical crisis. Yet, once educated about its cause, most find relief. Maintaining consistent sleep and reducing late-night stimulation helps. Sleep paralysis in adolescence becomes a mirror for modern lifestyles. Too fast, too bright, too restless. The young brain tries to rest, but the world keeps it awake. The result is that eerie half-dream, half-reality moment when the body sleeps while the mind remembers everything. Adulthood and sleep debt. In adulthood, sleep paralysis often reflects accumulated fatigue. Work, responsibility, and stress reduce deep rest. The body collapses into REM too quickly, skipping recovery stages. The brain wakes before the muscles do, causing paralysis. Adults tend to rationalize the event but still feel shaken. They lie still, calculating the time, waiting for control to return. The pressure of daily life echoes in their dreams, manifesting as shadow figures or weight on the chest. It is the subconscious asking for pause. Proper sleep hygiene, consistent hours, cooler rooms, digital silence, usually lessens episodes. For adults, sleep paralysis is not a curse but a signal. It says, in its own unnerving way, slow down. The mind and body must realign, or else they will meet again at the edge of wakefulness, locked in uneasy stillness. When it returns in old age. Though less frequent, sleep paralysis can reappear later in life. Older adults experience lighter sleep and more awakenings, which increase the chances of crossing REM boundaries. Medication, pain, or disrupted circadian rhythm contribute. Some elderly people report serene versions of paralysis, less fear, more reflection. They describe watching themselves sleep, sensing calm detachment, even curiosity. It may be that years of perspective soften the terror. The mind accepts what once felt unbearable. Still, frequent episodes can signal other sleep disorders that deserve attention. For many, though, these moments become meditative pauses, glimpses into the mechanics of consciousness. Sleep paralysis in old age reflects wisdom, the recognition that the body, after all its years of motion, still holds mysteries it continues to whisper in silence.